Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're going to be journeying through rifts in time to take on monsters in today's entry, Primeval, Ferocious Future Predator Game. This board game is based on the British TV programme Primeval, which ran from 2007 to 2012 on the channel ITV. This particular game came out in 2008, which coincided with the launch of Season 2 of Primeval.
Anomalies are starting to appear. Doorways in time, the worlds we can barely imagine.
The anomalies are conclusive proof that the past exists. And a fourth dimension as real and solid as those we already know. Our job is to predict and contain them.
Of course, it turns out that these anomalies, these rips in time, don't only link to the past. Some of them link to the future. And when that happens, this guy here, the future predator, comes through one of them from the future into our time, and he is a big threat.
No sign of the lion as yet. We're still hopeful, obviously. Yes.
The board game itself has got the TV show logo, nice and big here, and it's got a still from the final episode of Season 1 of the Future Predator taking on the Gorgonops. And it has to be said, I really am not particularly a fan of this at all, this front cover. This is just kind of really bland, and it's the Ferocious Future Predator game, but the Future Predator here is not actually all that obvious. The Gorgonops kind of takes up all of the visual field. That is what your eyes are attracted to, and you hardly really see the Future Predator here at all. I think they could have gone for a much nicer front cover. We can see a little bit more on the back here, where you can see the game board has got a kind of three-dimensional element to it, which is nice. And we've got information here about what the game's about, and we've got a contents list. Now, for anyone who likes monsters and creature designs, then Primeval is a show that's, although dated, I would still watch it and recommend it today. But how does the board game stack up? Let's take a look. We've got the Future Predator himself, which is by far my favourite game component. This guy has got lots and lots of detail on him. There's a very, very simple paint job on him. He's just got some white on the underbelly here, but it's nicely graduated into the rest of him. And he's got, I think, a very light, darker wash on here in order to bring out some of the details. But this guy is really nice looking, and I think he's come straight from the digital files that were used in the show. The game board is made up of these 4 different quadrants, each one representing a different place, which we'll have a look at later, and these go together jigsaw style in order to fit together. They are really nice and thick here, each one, so this is really nice. This quadrant here is where Abby Maitland begins, and this represents the Forest of Dean from Season 1, Episode 1, and this is where the temporal time anomalies actually first appear. This quadrant here is where Professor Nick Cutter begins, and this represents the London Underground from the 2nd episode of Season 1. This quadrant here is where Connor Temple begins, and this represents the grounds of the school from Season 1, Episode 1, where the Gorgonops comes through and stalks a child whose scent it has picked up.
Miss, there's a dinosaur in the playground.
Really, Ben? How old are you now?
This quadrant here is where Claudia Brown begins, and this represents the Permian era from the very first episode. This is actually where all of the prehistoric creatures come through the time anomaly from, so this is back in the past. Before you actually join these 4 quadrants together, you're going to want to actually attach an anomaly disc to each one. We do this with a little clip which just goes underneath and pokes through that hole, and then that has an anomaly disc which clips onto it like that, so that that can spin quite freely, and you're going to want to do that on all 4. Once those anomaly discs are in place, then we just slot together those pieces in order to make the whole board. Once that's done, we're going to take our central disc and our anomaly unit, and we're going to line up this tab here with this hole underneath and get that in position. And once that's in position, that can then go centrally in the middle of the board there and connect up with everything. Once that's done, we take the top of our anomaly unit and we connect that in place, and then we take our side units, connect them to their connector tabs, and then those get placed between each of the quadrants. And with that, the game is set up and is ready to begin. So Abby begins in the Forest of Dean, Claudia starts from the Permian, Connor begins at the school, and Nick starts underground. Now this is quite simply a roll and move game. So we roll the dice and then we're going to move in clockwise direction, and the object of the game is to move through each of these 4 different quadrants in time and space, and to get back to your starting point in order to be able to close the anomaly and to trap the future predator back where it came from. After you've rolled and moved, you then have to press down the anomaly to find out what fate has in store for you. And once a segment has been selected to open up an anomaly in that sector, you then have to roll the green dice in order to find out what happens. You will of course have noticed that those LEDs do not show up very well in bright sunshine. So in order to get the best out of this game, you're going to want to play it in a slightly darkened room so that they show up better. It also makes it far more atmospheric. Also of note is that this unit requires 3 LR44 button batteries, the kind that you'd get in a watch, and those do not come supplied with the game, so you're going to have to go out and get them, which is a bit of a pain. If on the green dice you roll an anomaly side, then whichever sector is illuminated, if somebody is standing on one of these 3 anomaly spaces here, then they get sucked into the anomaly and are trapped. In order to escape, on their next turn, this player has got to roll an even number to get out. On exiting the anomaly, they're going to come out onto these dinosaur footprints here. So a 2 will take them to here, a 4 will take them to here, and only a 6 will clear them from this danger area. On the other hand, with this green dice, if you roll one of the 3 future predator sides, then the future predator comes through to whichever segment has been illuminated. And the future predator, when he comes through, goes onto this anomaly disc here. Now there are pegs in the bottom of his feet, and there are 2 holes in the anomaly disc here. He will only fit onto it one way round, and you're going to be picking him up and moving him round quite a bit. So it's quite good that they've made him of this semi-flexible plastic, because it means that these are not going to snap when you're trying to put it in and take it out. Once he appears through the anomaly, this guy here is then also going to move, and that's dictated by the number shown on the dice next to the symbol of the future predator. So in this case here, if I rolled a 3 like this, then I would have to rotate this anomaly unit clockwise 3/4 clicks. Now this is where there is a problem straight away. When this unit is completely by itself and you rotate it, you can hear those quarter clicks. However, once you've got it set up with all these discs connected to it and you've got this random sound generator making noises as well, there is no way that you are going to hear those quarter clicks to be able to hear and know how far you have moved it. So going by sound alone here is going to be really difficult. So what I've done is added 4 little white triangle stickers onto this central orange cog at the 4 points of the compass, so that when this is turned you can see them moving and easily know when a quarter turn has been made. And of course, this is something that the manufacturers of this game should have done right from the very beginning. So moving this 3 quarter turns, 1, 2, 3, it spins this guy round here. And if you are on one of the 4 dinosaur footprints, you are potentially in trouble. You may be lucky and his 3 spins might miss you altogether. Or you might be unlucky and those 3 spins might swipe you to the floor, and if that happens you're going to have to move back to the beginning of the quadrant that you're in. Once the future predator has come through an anomaly, he's going to stay there until one of the other 3 sectors is illuminated and the dice is rolled, bringing the future predator into one of the other areas. Of course, if you're unlucky enough to have been trapped in an anomaly and are still trying to roll an even number to get out, and that section lights up and somebody else rolls and gets the future predator symbol, then you're out of luck, because the future predator is going to arrive in your anomaly, and when it does that, he is going to eat you, and you're going to have to go back to the start of that sector again. The fun of this game is, of course, getting to swipe another player with that future predator and sending them back to the beginning of that quadrant. The problem with this game, however, especially in a 2-player game, is that that doesn't get to happen all that often. Remember, in order for this future predator to actually be able to attack anybody, it needs to A, have that particular segment lit up randomly, B, have the future predator symbol rolled on the dice randomly, and C, have the person standing in one of these 4 spaces. And that really doesn't happen as often as you would want. So as you can see, there is a lot of luck involved in this game. You've obviously got the random roll of the dice to determine which space you land on. There's no choices that you can make about different paths that you could go. You've also got the random luck of which sector is illuminated by the central anomaly unit here, and you've also got the luck of what happens with that illuminated anomaly dependent upon what you roll with this dice. So if you're somebody who doesn't like luck-based games and not being able to choose which path you move down or use any kind of strategy or tactics, this game is really not going to be for you. The main problem for me is that this game just seems to feature an awful lot of very strange design choices. The game box itself is just really bland, and that kind of carries across to the actual game board itself. Apart from the vertical sections which tell you what each of those game sectors are, it's just a very bland, generic, different coloured sections. One of them's supposed to be the underground, but it's just this kind of sandy coloured mottled base, which doesn't show you anything. If it's the underground, then they should have done whole new artwork for it. They could have had the railway tracks, pipes, rats, brickwork. All of those elements should have been in there instead of just this bland, sandy coloured base. And the photographs that they've chosen in order to just stick random screen captures from the TV series onto the board are just really poorly chosen. Some of them are blurry. Some of them have got absolutely nothing to do with the sector that they are representing, and there's very little to nothing about the actual future predator. Out of the 4 sectors, there's only a picture of the future predator in one of them. And if you're going to put in a picture of the future predator, you want to put in a good picture. And they've used a really, really poor one, which barely shows it off at all. I just don't think there's any need for those screen cap photographs to be on the board at all. You could just completely get rid of them and it would look so much better. And the locations that they've chosen for the 4 quadrants on the game board are really odd choices as well. You've got the Permian era and the Forest of Dean, which do both feature in the final episode of Season 1 where the future predator comes in. And then you've got 2 other locations, the school and the underground, which have got absolutely nothing to do with the last episode, the one that the future predator actually features in, at all. And that's the thing with a game like this. If you're going to theme it, then you really need to stick to the theme and make sure it is logical and that there is a narrative structure that works to it. For this particular game, you have to start from your beginning point, move around the board through those 4 segments and back to your original point in order to close the anomaly and send the future predator back to where it came from. Now the thing is, narratively, that doesn't make sense. In the TV show, the anomalies appear randomly in random places, they stay open for random amounts of time, and then they close by themselves. There is no way of closing them. So quite why you would need to move around the board going through those different quadrants to close it, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. And it also doesn't make sense as to why you would be able to close the anomaly just by moving around and getting back to where you started from. If you perhaps were trying to collect something like parts of a machine in order to be able to build it to close the anomaly, then narratively that would make sense. But you need to have some kind of story which actually works with your game. So overall, it's probably not a recommendation. It's not one I'm going to tell you to go out and buy, but it can be picked up pretty cheap. There are, of course, far more games which I've got in my collection which are much better than this, and we'll be taking a look at some of them next time. So until then, stay safe. This is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.